The restrictions imposed in 2020 has left us filmmakers with few opportunities to get out and about with our cameras. And it's noticeable how television has had to adapt to produce content to fill its schedules. I've used my time in this winter lockdown to dig out some old travel footage that's never been edited or shown before. Well, I decided that if it's good enough for Michael Palin, it's certainly good enough for me. We've been immensely privileged over the years to have travelled right across the globe, and what follows is just a snapshot of some of those places Barbara and I have visited. It was in 2007 that we landed in the Galápagos Islands. For the visitor, there is only one reason to drop into this extraordinary archipelago, and that's to see the wildlife. The film idea I had back then focused on the postcards we sent home. So let's see now what we had to say. Dear Georgia, here we are in the Galápagos Islands, right around the other side of the world from where you are. These boobies, gulls and iguanas all seem to get along just fine. Aren't they gorgeous? Just like you, really. Missing you. Love, Grandad. Dear Tess, say hello to my new friend Sally. Sally Lightfoot Crab. Isn't she pretty with her bright colours? She doesn't like getting her feet wet, which is very strange for a crab. Instead, she lives around the shoreline feeding on titbits that wash up. This one's a little shy. Or maybe she's not so sure about this hermit crab. I don't know. What do you think? Looking forward to seeing you soon. Love, Nanny and Grandad. Dear Ava, these sea lions are just so adorable when they're young. Do you know how I know they're sea lions and not seals like we have at home? Because they have little ears. Can you see them? Mummy and Daddy sea lion like to have a bit of a cuddle, but they have a very funny way of kissing. And this little one has lost her mummy and is just desperate for a drink of milk. But she can't find her anywhere. Are you my mummy? No, maybe she's out at sea getting some fish for herself. Oh, there she is at last. All our love, Nanny and Grandad. Dear Ethan, you would just love one of these land iguanas as a pet. They're everywhere on the Galápagos Islands. I even had to step over one that was lying on the path just soaking up the sun. Do you think they look a bit like a dragon? I didn't see any of them breathing fire, and anyway, I understand they're mostly vegetarian. Still, they look good on it, don't they? And they can grow up to a metre long and live for 60 or 70 years. Something for show and tell at school, maybe. Love, Nanny and Grandad. Dear Mum, having a great time. 4.5 million years ago, these marine iguanas were just like their cousins, the land iguanas. But these ones swim and they dive to eat algae in the shallow water around the coast. They're everywhere. They seem to survive the saline conditions by snorting out the salt, which gets all over them, and then they have to rub it off on the rocks. This one's in hot pursuit of a potential mate, I think. Not the most handsome of males, but there's a very tactile bond between mum and their offspring. Hope you're well, Andrew. Dear Sam, if there's one thing the Galápagos are famous for, it's their giant tortoises. Interesting facts about giant tortoises. They're cold-blooded and they take time to warm up in the morning. Their only predator is man, as sailors in days gone by would take them on board for fresh meat because they can survive for up to a year without food. They're protected now, of course, and numbers are growing again. One individual is known to have lived to 170 in captivity, but typically they live to 100 in the wild. They like mud baths to get rid of the ticks and parasites. Anyway, we've had a really interesting holiday and learnt loads, but sadly we're coming home tomorrow, so looking forward to seeing you soon. Andrew. The Galápagos Islands are a truly unique experience. What a great privilege it is to get so close to the wildlife. And how special that the creatures are left to their natural environment and any intrusion on their islands is carefully controlled. Let's hope it continues this way for future generations, so that if our grandchildren are lucky enough to visit themselves, they will find a world unchanged from that we discovered in 2007. Staying with the wildlife theme, I've included a stopover in Namibia. It was our only visit to the African continent. Namibia is about the size of France and Great Britain combined, or to use a more common measure, about 40 times the size of Wales. On the other hand, the population is only 2/3 of that of Wales, so people are pretty sparsely spread. With only 4,000 miles of paved road, our small group flew into our first desert camp, unloaded some essential supplies before completing our transfer from the airstrip. Our focus throughout this holiday was to do as much as possible on foot. That is, once we'd been dropped off at potentially interesting locations. The reserves in Namibia are not as well known as in many other parts of Africa. And like the population, the wildlife is spread far and wide.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah.
But being on foot, our quiet approach meant that we could get close to giraffe, zebra, ostrich, springbok, wildebeest, and the magnificent oryx, Namibia's national animal that appears rampant on the country's coat of arms. On one exciting occasion, we came across rhino sleeping in the shade just 30 metres away. A real thrill. We really enjoyed our hiking across the dusty plains, particularly at dusk when it was very atmospheric. But without doubt, the best place to see wildlife in Namibia is around the waterholes in the National Park of Etosha. Etosha is the largest wildlife park in Namibia, and it brings together both the wildlife and the tourist. This large waterhole is a major benefit for the animals that come down during the evening. But here lies the contrast with the Galápagos Islands. The animals are just as wild, but the waterhole is man-made. And behind our viewing point is an extensive hotel complex. Africa, of all the continents, is suffering the most from global warming. Just as the tourist would not be here without the wildlife would not be here in such large numbers without the tourist. Springbok are not just the prettiest of animals, but the most prolific. As the elephants arrived, this was beginning to feel like an organised show. All the other animals sensed their arrival and made way for them. But the elephants themselves headed straight for the source of freshly drawn water. And even, if you look carefully, used their foot to depress the valve to increase the flow. An elephant needs to drink 200 litres of water a day. That's 50 gallons. It's hard to imagine where else in this arid land they would find such a source. Once they have had their fill, they take time for a bath. And throwing water and dust on themselves is their way of cooling down after the day's heat has taken its toll. And as for us, an evening stroll to a sunset location and a glass of bubbly
John, is there one more
was our way of cooling off at the end of our holiday.
Cheers.
Good, everybody.